What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And we have yet again another MLB The Show franchise video for you, and this one here is a little bit of a special one. We're taking a break, not a break, we're just taking another series turn into the channel, and we are diving and we are actually resurging a old franchise that we have done. We are bringing back my Pittsburgh Pirates to the channel. We are going to be playing yet again the Pittsburgh Pirates in a franchise. This is not a fantasy draft like the Knothole Gang, so if you guys are more interested in something that is a little more fresh, a little more close to home with the actual MLB teams, things like that, you guys are going to absolutely love this series. And if you guys do end up loving this series, be sure to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more amazing content, because only you, that is right, only you can make a difference for today's channel, so your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, though, guys, we are going to be talking about this franchise to the core. We are going to be breaking it down. We have a lot of stuff packed into this episode, and if you guys have watched the previous episodes of the Knothole franchise, you guys will have a little bit of a similar idea of how we're going to be laying out today's episode. Today is not going to feature any actual gameplay. I do want to point that out there. If you guys are here for just gameplay, episode 1 of these series are always going to include gameplay. The Prologue series are going to be talking about the structure of the team, 40-man roster moves, contract signings, free agent signings, extensions, all types of that stuff, laying out of the roster. We're going to be discussing a lot of the players. We're going to be doing a lot of different breakdowns, and we're going to be doing our best to really try to make something happen here, and that is the goal for today. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about right now, starting things off, kicking things off, we're going to be talking about the starting pitchers in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. We're going to be breaking down some of the top arms, the top overall guys, and I know from first glances, you know, you're going to look at the overalls and you're going to be a little scared. Do not fear, do not worry. We are going to be doing some things with this team. We are going to be making moves, and not only that, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of potential in this team, not just in the pitching staff, but also in the offensive capabilities of some of these position players that we are going to be breaking down in. But right now we're going to be talking about the starting pitchers. We're not going to break into these guys fully yet. We are going to take some time and talk about player development videos, things like that. But starting things off, Mitch Keller, 82 overall, B potential, 28-year-old, recently just got signed a very nice contract. It's around $15 million. We're going to be discussing the budget at some point. But Mitch Keller definitely really last year kind of showed that signs of being a true ace. Hopefully we can transition that into our Pirates franchise. I really do think Keller could be a very strong asset. As we move into the next guy, Johan Oviedo, another guy that showed glimpses of being very good last year, but did have those stints where he was just not so good, and we're hoping to have a little more of a consistent season from Johan Oviedo, and I think if we can find that consistency, Oviedo is only 26 years old still and has plenty of room to grow. This could be a guy that we could have in our rotation for the next 3 to 4 years and really not be breaking the bank on having a nice 2-3 guy in the rotation. Moving on, this is where things get fun. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to break it down. I know right here it is saying he's in AA. We're going to be talking about things like that and further. I don't know that Paul Skeens is going to start off in the majors. If he has a good spring, it is possible, but I don't want to tell anybody that Skeens is absolutely going to be on the major league roster come opening day. You guys are going to see Paul Skeens before opening day in some of the spring training footage that we have, but for now, for the time being, Paul Skeens is definitely in the fighting race to be that 5th guy in the rotation. I'm hoping he can be strong, and I know you guys are already going to put in the comments, what do you mean the 5th guy in the rotation? He's the 3rd best overall pitcher. Trust me when I say development is going to be important. He is only 21 years old, and we are going to jump down a little bit. At the bottom of the screen, you're going to see another guy, very highly touted prospect in the organization. And if you guys are following real-time Major League Baseball, Jared Jones has been shoving in spring training so far this season. So I am hoping we can see a little bit of that from Jared Jones in our franchise, hoping that he can take it, turn it up a little bit, and see that. Now, the rest of these guys, we have Marco Gonzalez, Martin Perez, Eric Lowler, and JT Brubaker. We're not going to break into a lot of those guys yet, but I will say between Marco Gonzalez and Martin Perez and Lowler, those guys are all going to be fighting for a position for sure. Marco Gonzalez, we are paying him, I think it's around like $6.8 million for this season. So that is a bit of a high tag on a guy that's only a 70 overall. Not saying that he can't be something good for us. He doesn't walk a lot of people, but we want to see Marco Gonzalez shine a little bit sooner than later. Now taking a look, shifting over, staying with the pitching side. If you guys have heard about it, I know there's some controversy. We're not even getting into it right now. Aroldis Chapman is the highest overall relief pitcher on this team. We're not counting closers in that. We're talking about just the guys that are setting up or in that middle of the bullpen type of guys. And we have a couple guys that I do really like here despite overalls. Chapman being 36 years old. We will see how he holds up. Everybody knows MLB The Show has a little bit of that tendency to kind of drop guys even if they're performing good due to age. Now, transitioning, Dory Moretta. This is a guy that I really liked seeing from the Pirates last year. He had a lot of really unique stuff, has a great personality, and I'm really hoping that Moretta can be a guy that we can really utilize this season and really have that potential to be a solid bullpen piece. Talking about solid bullpen pieces, though, we have guys like Colin Holderman who really showed capabilities, but he did see the struggles last year. Things kind of did fizzle out, and that's kind of similar to a lot of the guys down the list there. Ryan Barucki did do well. Roncy Contreras, not so well. Hoping that we can have a bounce back from him, because if Contreras can bounce back, he could be a guy that we could see in the future. Again, only 24 years old, but it is just that matter of, is he going to be able to perform? And we are going to find that out from a lot of these guys in spring training. There is more weight on this spring training than I think I've ever done in one franchise, so I want to put that out there. A lot of guys are going to be competing for positions. Guys like Contreras, really, this spring is going to matter. It could put them right on that major league squad, or it could even send them somewhere else, or maybe even keep them in the minor leagues and hoping they develop. I'm not saying that's the thing for Contreras, but I do want to see high hopefuls. And as we talk about high hopefuls, there is one huge silver lining in this entire pitching staff, and that is the Pittsburgh native himself, the man slamming icy lights down like they're water. We're talking about our guy. Everybody loves him, David Bednar, one of the best car salesmen you'll ever see in this area of Pittsburgh. David Bednar, 92 overall, 29 years old, a potential. Absolutely shoved last year, an all-star as well. The accolades will be adding up, I feel, in this guy's career. He has really showed a lot of highly touted stuff between the Pirates, and really not much more to talk about with the pitching side of things, but definitely a guy to really keep in mind. He is the best possible outcome that we could get as far as a guy in that ninth inning. You want to see David Bednar. And now that we have wrapped things up with the pitchers in the organization, let's take a look at a position that has some depth, has some weight to it, a lot of high, hopeful guys. We're going to talk about the first one, Henry Davis, finally probably going to be getting an opportunity to actually play in that catcher's role, not only in real life, but for this franchise. There is a lot of guys, a lot of people that we're going to talk about here. Henry Davis, definitely the guy that I'm really the most highly active on. I want to see this guy do well, and you guys are going to see how much I want to see him do well very shortly in this video. As we move to the next guy, Yasmani Grandal recently signed to the Pirates, 35 years old. I see Yasmani more as the third guy in this list of catchers. I don't really see him as the number two. He is probably going to make the major league roster because keeping a guy like him in the minor leagues isn't really going to be helping anyone. He is a nice veteran presence that might add something to these two young players that we're going to be talking about. And that next young guy is Endy Rodriguez. Unfortunately for Rodriguez, in actual MLB, he is down with an injury that is going to put him out for the remainder of the 2024 season. But lucky for us, lucky for us, things like that don't exist in the MLB universe to start, and we are going to be using Endy Rodriguez. Now, the question is, Endy does have a lot of hitting tools that he's going to have to work on, which we will talk about in a later video. His defense is there. He does play a lot of different positions. With that being said, Endy Rodriguez, as I said, he probably will be the number 2 guy. However, in order to get Grandal some time in, I think it's important that Endy Rodriguez kind of flexes around this year. You might see me utilizing Endy Rodriguez in places like first base, second, maybe corner outfield spots, just to be able to get him some of those reps. I know it's not the best thing. I know it's not something you really want to see, but if he is going to stay on the Major League roster, we have to find a home for him, and I really think that is going to be his home, at least until maybe we can shop Grandal around maybe towards the deadline. Maybe a team needs him. I don't know. Maybe we'll need him more. Depends on how he plays. Depends on the value. I don't know how much we're going to get out of a 35-year-old catcher with achy knees. It's going to be something to kind of talk about, but that is definitely something that is worth noting. Next on the list, not much to talk about here. Only one guy we're really going to discuss, and that is newly acquired first baseman Rowdy Tellez. Rowdy Tellez does have a lot of potential pop on his bat. The stats don't really show it. Only 75 power against the righties and then a measly 50 against the lefties. But Tellez is a guy that has in the future shown those promising sides that he can hit the ball hard and he can hit it over the wall. So that is something that is worth noting. Again, we have a lot of guys in the position. I don't think Tellez is going to be the only guy that is playing first base. It is worth mentioning, like I said, Endy Rodriguez could get some opportunities here. We have guys like Jared Triolo that can play first base, and we also have guys like Yasmani Grandal that could even slot in there, or even Connor Joe. So a lot of depth there, even though it's not showing it. None of those guys are primary first basemen, but Tellez will probably be taking the blunt of first base in this franchise, at least as far as righties go. Moving on, another position, and you're going to find this being a very common theme with this Pittsburgh Pirates team, is the potential and the amount of talented players are there. And second base really kind of displays that, at least at the top here. You got guys like Nick Gonzalez and Ji-Hwan Bae, both 24 years old, both around that 67, 68 overall range, be potential guys. These are two guys that could definitely, again, be fighting for that starting spot at second. Are they going to get it? Is it going to be somebody else? I'm not really sure. There is so much up in the air on this team, and I really want you guys to let me know. Let me know down in the comments below, what is a position that you guys, who is a guy that you would love to see on this team? Who is a guy that is fighting for a spot that you really want to see? For me, Nick Gonzalez and Ji-Hwan Bae, I'm going to be honest. Between them and then Tamar Johnson, who you see down in Double-A coming up at some point, maybe halfway through the year. It depends on how this guy performs. We're probably going to leave him in Double-A so we can kind of get that ego up a little bit, make him feel good about himself, then maybe move him to Triple-A and C. So I would say realistically, you're looking at Tamar Johnson maybe hitting MLB around sometime at the beginning of next year, maybe halfway in the season. If he does crack the Major League roster this year, I would only imagine it's probably going to be a September call-up. But regardless, Tamar is coming, and I don't really want 3 second basemen on the roster. One of these guys is eventually going to have to go. So that is something to kind of keep in mind, at least for me. I want to make sure I'm providing the best opportunities and talk about people that are the best. Let's talk about the best defensive third baseman in all of baseball. I don't care. I don't want to hear the arguments. It's there. Here he is. Ke'Bryan Hayes, another guy the Pirates recently have locked up for many, many years to come. Ke'Bryan Hayes really finally last year was showing that potential that he really has had. The bat is finally starting to come around. You're going to see a very well-rounded player in Ke'Bryan Hayes this year, and he has really shined to be one of those guys that's like a centerpiece on this team. So we're really hoping that Ke'Bryan Hayes can keep carrying that. Again, we know the glove is there. It is just a matter of if that bat can stay consistent, and that is really what we want to see the most out of Ke'Bryan Brian Hayes. Jared Triolo, again, mentioned him. Triolo probably going to be more along the lines of the platoon guy, similar to Endy Rodriguez. He's kind of like an Endy Rodriguez on steroids that can't play catcher, is really what it comes down to. Triolo can hit. He is a very decent hitter. Almost hit a 300 average last year. So it is worth noting that a guy like that does have a lot of potential to become a very, very big threat on this team. Now, big threats on the team. Let's talk about the biggest one of them all, the cruise missile himself, Oneil Cruz. 25 years old, 79 overall, A potential, and I think that's being a little bit on the low side. Because if you guys have seen what this guy's been doing in spring, you know that this is a potential to be the Oneil Cruz year of baseball. A lot of guys are excited. I'm excited. But he's not the only one. As much as we want to talk about the potential, the talent that is Oneil Cruz, he's already been setting records. He's throwing the ball harder than anyone. He's hitting the ball harder than anyone. There are some other guys. Liover Peguero. For example, talking about that second base opportunities, I think Peguero could be a really, really good solidified person to take over second base to start, because we have seen Nick Gonzalez struggle before. We have seen Ji-Hwan Bae struggle before, and we have seen Peguero struggle before as well. But I think out of those guys that I'm listing, I think Peguero is the one that is going to be the most ready to be a major league player, and that for that reason is why I think he is going to be probably the second baseman. But again, spring training will determine that, as we are now going to transition over into the outfield portion of this team. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving into the outfielders, and another heavy hitter we're going to be talking about. That's the guy, B-Rye, Brian Reynolds, the 29-year-old, 83 overall, B potential. Another guy locked in on a nice contract for the Pirates recently. Reynolds is going to be another guy, highly, highly important part of this team. Reynolds is definitely going to be right in that middle of the order, going to be that guy that is providing a lot of runs, a lot of pop, a lot of good average, hopefully, this year for us. If Reynolds does good, I really feel like we could take this team even deeper. It is up to guys like Brian Reynolds. It is up to guys like Brian Hayes and Oneil Cruz to really set the bar for this team so the other guys can carry off well and go off of that. And talking about guys that are important to the team, I do find it important that Jack Sawinski, who is listed as a center fielder, we're going to get into our outfield situation in a bit. We're going to talk about something, just not right now. We're going to break down Jack Sawinski as it stands. And Sawinski, we've seen that power. We've seen that raw, that natural power that Sawinski can possess. The question is, how are we going to harness that, and how are we going to transition that into a major league team? Because the problem for Sawinski right now was he struggled with lefties last year. Much like a lot of lefties do, Sawinski did fall into that category. Now, we did see him kind of start to eventually hit some lefties. He is doing a lot better in spring against lefties, so it is worth noting that Sawinski, hopefully, we can turn things around with him, but is a guy that I do want to mention. I do think he's important, that he does need to start performing well for this team in general to start performing well. And now we move on to who is arguably one of the most popular, one of the most highly touted players to ever come through Pittsburgh in recent years, Andrew McCutchen, the 37-year-old all-star, former MVP, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger winner, Andrew McCutchen. He has 299 home runs, one shy of 300. Andrew McCutchen hoping to turn things up this season, really set the bar for the team. We need to see a healthy Andrew McCutchen. As far as morale goes, this is the guy. Probably most of the time you're going to be seeing him playing DH. We might put him out in the field every once in a while, but I do think it's important to keep a guy like that very healthy. Not much more to really talk about with him. I just really think that McCutchen, the morale and everything, very important. And real briefly, we're just going to kind of show you guys the layout of some of the top contracts that are going on. Now, this is going to be updated here because we are going to be making some acquisitions. We are going to be talking about that as well. But as it stands, as the Raw team, before we made any moves, before we did anything at all, here's what it stands. Mitch Keller getting paid 15.4, followed by Reynolds at 13.3, followed by Chapman at 10.5, Cabrian Hayes at 8.7, Martin Perez at 8, Marco Gonzalez at 6.9 million, and then Andrew McCutchen at a $5 million marker, rounding out the budget. And I just wanted to fastly include this one just for those of you guys that might be wondering. I did record this franchise just before the Blake Snell trade that sent him over to the Giants, and during this franchise, you might see some guys like JD Martinez, Tommy Pham. Some of those guys might actually sign to some teams. So I just wanted to throw it out there that I am aware they are on the free agency market. However, for our franchise, these guys might find different homes. And we have the first move of the season. This one, not the biggest one, but this one a little bit close to home for some Pirate fans, and I wanted to at least include them. The bullpen, not the strongest, and adding a guy like Mark Melancon might actually add a little bit of flair to the team. The former Pittsburgh Pirate, the former reliever of the year, Mark Melancon, the Shark, is back in the Shark Tank, hoping for one final go at it. So we are going to be adding Mark Melancon to the team. It is worth noting, in order to make room for Mark Melancon, we did have to remove John O'Reilly. Not the biggest move, but it is worth noting that that is one of the guys that we ended up moving on from. Now, in order to allow him to go to the 40-man roster, we did move Colin Shelby, so he is going to be placed on waivers. He's only a 61 overall D potential. Shelby did actually have a little bit of a better season than what MLB The Show is talking about, but that is not really something that is the biggest deal, and it's not really something that matters too much in this franchise. So it is just worth mentioning, though, 40-man roster slot, Selby loses it, so we can make room for Mark Melancon. Next guy that we are going to be dropping off this team is Luke Brown, so a little kudos to you, GGs to Luke Brown. Thank you for your service. $45,000 is going to be paid to him on the season, and that one is in order to make another reunion happen, and this one is going to be in the hands of Austin Meadows. We are going to be giving Meadows a 2-year, $2 million offer. Now, some of you guys may be saying that's a little bit of an overpay. I disagree. We were able to kind of land that club option, so it's really only 1 year for $2 million, and if we decide that we want to go forward with him, then we will with Austin Meadows. But that is kind of the area that he is at, and in order for him to make the 40-man roster, we do move from Josh Palacios. He is going to go now up on the waivers, so we can make Meadows have an opportunity on the team. And next guy to be talking about, next players to be talking about, actually. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, why are we talking about Deivi Garcia? He's on the White Sox. Well, let me explain. We ended up making one trade, actually, to kind of land some guys, some hopefuls, and we ended up moving on from a couple guys like Aquila Williams and Cannon Smith and Njigba, I do believe, was the part of this trade, and it did allow us to get a guy like Deivi Garcia, who is a 24-year-old B potential former starter, now converted into a reliever, but he is going to be a guy that we are going to be messing around with, so it is worth noting he is going to also be on the team. Now, we didn't just get Deivi Garcia, as we also landed Corey Lee. Now, Corey Lee, again, not really a guy that I'm expecting to be this big, amazing thing, but I did have to kind of keep into consideration that somebody down the line could potentially get hurt. Grandal could get hurt. Davis could get hurt. Rodriguez could get hurt. And I don't want to really just rely on the other two in order to have that team filled out. I wanted to make a move on a guy that I felt comfortable having on the team, and that guy was Corey Lee. Now, in order to make room for Corey Lee on the 40-man roster, we won't be adding Deivi Garcia, but in order to make room for Corey Lee, we did move on from Jason DeLay, so he is now taken off the 40-man roster, and we are going to be looking at what Corey Lee can do for this team. And now, a big one. This one, a big landing, a big splash, at least in my opinion. Now, we might not have him for too long, but it is worth noting Michael Lorenzen is going to be a part of this team. I know we could have went the Domingo Germán route. Not going to get into it, but I wasn't really feeling that signing myself. So we ended up taking Michael Lorenzen instead, who I think honestly is just an overall better option. Morale-wise or not, I think Lorenzen is definitely a good guy. 2 years we offered him, and we are going to be paying him $6.5 million a year. And very similar to another contract that we just talked about, we did give this one as well a club option, very similar to the Meadows one. So if we do decide that we want to take Lorenzen into next year, we will be able to do that. But if he doesn't pan out and we want to move on from him, we can just do that as well. So Lorenzen does get signed, and it is worth noting Lorenzen is a pretty capable player. 81 stamina, he is going to be a workhorse guy. This guy is going to give us some innings. The only thing with the Lorenzen is don't really expect that big swing and miss stuff. It's not the biggest deal. It's not like we're really going to be having too much of a factor into that. And some of you guys actually might be wondering, well, why did you do this type of trade? Why was this the trade that you decided to go to? So with Lorenzen, I know we did do the club option, but we also backloaded this contract. So we are actually only really paying $6 million right now, and then that club option to take it further is on $7 million. I think that's very fair for both parties. If we end up taking him, Lorenzen does get that $1 million extra bonus that he's going to take into the next season. However, if we don't want to do it, no harm, no foul. He can find another guy to take that contract on. And we are going to talk about a little bit of a breakdown. Now, before you guys kind of freak out and you're like, whoa, this depth chart looks weird, I understand. I tried all I could do to break this down. No matter how I set the lineup, for whatever reason, it didn't want to change for where we wanted to put people. So I'm just going to talk about where people are actually being and standing as far as we talk. So I did go in, I did do some setting changes, and we did move some people around. So it's mostly an outfield is what we're going to be talking about now. We'll talk more about it come opening day roster, but Brian Reynolds is actually going to be moving over to right field, where our left fielder is going to be Jack Sawinski. So that may confuse some people because that might be sounding like we're kind of leaving a hole open, and well, you'd be absolutely right to believe that. We are absolutely leaving a hole open because we did need to make room for a new player on the team. Michael A. Taylor, those of you guys that do know, did recently just sign with the Pittsburgh Pirates as well. The Pirates have been making some moves, trying to grab some guys in free agency before opening day starts, and we are going to be taking advantage of that as well. Michael Taylor definitely is a guy that I would put it in that classification as that sneaky pop type player. He hit around, I think, like 25-ish home runs last year, so really did a pretty decent job of being a player that, you know, you kind of like to see, and we ended up signing him for 2 years on $6 million. Again, you're going to see this kind of going on, but this is also a team option, so we can decide if we want to bring Taylor back next year. $6 million I thought was a pretty fair deal for one of the guys that is a very, very, very good defensive outfielder as well. So even if the bat does fall off a little bit this year, I think that defense is definitely going to make up for it. And that is not just the only moves that we were making. We still made some other moves, and this one here is no exception. We did move on, and this is the trade that actually included Alika Williams and Cannon Smith and Jigba. The other one didn't really matter too. I think we sent like a bottom tier catcher and I think like another reliever or something like that, but it doesn't matter. This one, we are going to be bringing an 18-year-old center fielder, 62 overall, Isaiah Drake. This is pretty much just a depth move, but it is worth noting. We were able to land an 18-year-old in Isaiah Drake. Hopefully, he can really come to form and be a strong player for us. And as we talk about things, I do want to break into it. We added a couple other people along the mix as far as this 40-man roster goes. Paul Skeens is going to be one of the guys that is getting added onto the team, as well as Jared Jones, who is going to be following both of those guys in Jared Jones and Paul Skeens. Again, fighting for that 5 spot in the rotation. Maybe both of them make it, maybe neither of them make it, but it's worth noting those guys are going to be dogging for a spot. And we did have to make a little bit of room for Jared Jones, and that was just to remove Braxton Ashcraft from the 40-man roster. I didn't really want to do this move, but I really wanted to have Ashcraft be a big part of the team. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be around about what moves that we did make. As we're going to talk about it right here, we were able to kind of break down what the depth chart's going to look like now after all the signings, after everything's looking at. Pay no attention to the starting rotation, because the starting rotation that is more set for what spring training is like. All of those guys are the guys that I would kind of fall and put them in that they're competing for a spot area. None of these guys may make the opening day roster as far as the starters go. We also have guys like Jared Jones and other players in our system that I would like to try out as well, and we're going to see what they do. But we are here to talk about this entire depth. So we have catching Henry Davis, DHing Andrew McCutchen, Jared Triolo, Cabrian Hayes, probably going to be playing that around. I would say, again, Hayes is probably going to be the third baseman. Don't know why Triolo's over him. Just don't pay attention to that. Hayes is going to be the primary third baseman, just like with Tellez. Tellez probably going to be the blunt of the first base, but again, we got guys like Connor Joe that could definitely fit in that mix. And then, like we mentioned before, Peguero, Nick Gonzalez around that second base area. O'Neal Cruz going to be taking the primary of the shortstop spot. And then in left field, Jack Sawinski. Center field, Michael A. Taylor. And then in right field will be Brian Reynolds, not Austin Meadows. He is not the guy that we are going to be fully talking about. And yeah, a little bit of free agency recap for those of you guys that may have lost it. We only did sign 4 people, but they are 4 guys that I think are going to all make an impact potentially. Mark Melancon, Austin Meadows, Michael Lorenzen, and Michael A. Taylor. Those are the contracts in front of you. And if you guys really want the extra depth, we have a full re-signing of all the guys that we ended up re-signing, giving them some extra contracts, as we're going to break into those before we talk about the prospects of the team and wrap this video up. But some of those guys that we did sign, we brought Quinn Priester to a 1-year deal. He is going to be coming back next year. David Bednar gets 2 years to his contract. Henry Davis gets a sizable 6 years, $21.74 million contract. Andy Rodriguez gets 3 years, $3.74. O'Neal Cruz, 4 years on $10.7. Peguero's going to get 2 years added to his, and we're going to do another renewable contract with Jack Sawinski. So we are definitely buying into this team. We are locking in some guys. We are making our names heard. And talking about people making their names heard, we got some top prospects on the way. We got Paul Skeens ranking at number 3. We have another one in Jared Jones, or this one is Tamar Johnson at number 17. And then again, Jared Jones is going to be number 43 in the top 100. And finally, yeah, we have another one. That is Anthony Solometo. He is number 80 in the top 100. So if you guys break that down, we have 4 guys in the top 100. A lot of potential, a lot of talent still in this team. A lot of these guys are coming up now, but there is so much potential to be held in this team, and I am very excited to be getting this team underway. If you guys are as excited as I am for this series, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. This is going to conclude the prologue part of this franchise. Again, we are going to be playing in the next episode. We are going to be getting a couple games in. We're going to be breaking those guys down, talking about the hopefuls, talking about the woes, talking about everybody that is going to be involved in this franchise. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye-bye.